Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee, and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. Bruce, I feel a little bit like Don Pardo right here. Like I'm setting us up like live, but not quite live.
We're live. But when you hear this, we won't be, right?
You know, we a little cold open every once in a while is good for a program that's been around for 50 years.
How long did you watch Saturday Night? Because you're younger than the show. I saw the first episode, so.
See, I probably came into it in the late 80s, stopped with it in the mid to late 90s. It's one of those shows where just the classic lineup, Dana Carvey,
Mike Myers,
Kevin Nealon, Dennis Miller,
Bill Hartman,
Victoria Jackson, Al Franken doing his Stuart Smalley. That was kind of my wheelhouse, Wayne's World, and even in recent years, because it's one of those shows where it feels like if the cast isn't quite right, I might just pass on an entire season. Like last year, I don't know if I watched really a single episode.
Because
I had kind of gotten into that cast with Cecily Strong and Kate McKinnon, and they left. We need a year to reboot or so. I'll come back to it. It's the last 22 seasons now of Kenan Thompson. I mean, man, that guy has been around forever. But the trivia question on him, on Kenan Thompson, he is the first cast member to be born after the show debuted. He was born in 1978.
Wow. And they had a lot of ones who were young, but then apparently they weren't young enough. There was a year when they had Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. They were bad. They were bad on the show. They weren't funny, and they really had attitude, I thought.
But they had that, 5-year period where Lorne Michaels had left. Dick Ebersol was largely the producer, and those are some bad casts and some bad seasons. But there were people on it who you would know, really, really well, who went on to bigger and better things like Seinfeld. I mean, even, Chevy Chase, he was only on it for that first season.
Isn't that weird? Yeah, there was a reset year where they had people on for just a year. Martin Short was on. Billy Crystal was on. And they also did that funny skit where it's Martin Short and Harry Shearer, where they're the synchronized swimmers, but the one couldn't swim. And it introduced us to Corky, or one of those characters that Christopher Guest played and then later had in movies.
Okay.
It was very fun to see that reset because a lot of the things that year were taped.
Yeah, that was season 10. So that was between 84 and 85. So there's your Olympic connection. Jim Belushi, Billy Crystal, Mary Gross, Christopher Guest, Rich Hall, Gary Kroeger, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Harry Shearer, Martin Short, and Pamela Stevenson.
I think now they have too many cast members. I can't get a visual bead on who's who. In the beginning, was it 6 or 7 that they had in the original cast? They were able to do a lot of different things. If you look back, this does have its origins in a lot of variety television. Carol Burnett should be considered a kind of a spark for this because they were always playing different characters, and they're just 3 or 4 of them, depending on how the cast was. But this was supposed to be a big game changer for NBC because they were running Tonight Show reruns on Saturday nights, and they thought, well, let's let the kids have the time. Nobody's watching then anyway. And Lorne Michaels came from Canada and brought a number of Canadians with him. So it was a little different vibe, if you will. They turned this over to those folks. Now, the new movie, Saturday Night, is just amazing. I mean, honestly, it's on my top 10 list already.
Wow.
Because it's that good. And it details not necessarily what happened, but kind of the atmosphere, because they have way too much stuff that was not part of that first night. And when you talk to the people who were part of that first cast, they say it was not as chaotic as it makes it seem in the movie.
Okay.
But it captures the spark. There's that kind of moment there that, we're worried about the time. We're worried about do we have everything? Is the set built? They're still putting bricks on the set as the countdown begins. So it was, it's a wonderful, wonderful look at how this all got started.
Yeah, I could see that too, where you're trying to create some drama. So maybe some of these things happen throughout the season, but you're not trying to tell a whole story about the whole season. You're just trying to tell the story about how it launched. So we're gonna compact that. We're gonna play a little loose with the facts. Yeah, it looks like a fun one. It's on my list to see. Whether or not I get to it in the theater to be determined, but I definitely want to check it out. It looks like fun.
Well, it's the 50th year, so they're going to have a lot of big things on the real show. And I think I think there's a book out coming too.
Okay.
Having this movie kind of hanging there for a while is a great reminder of what it did do, because this was a game changer. The variety shows we used to see back in the day were mainly singing stars, doing a little bit of humor. You had Sonny and Cher, and they did some skits. You had Dean Martin, he did some skits. Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck. But this was one that kind of leaned heavily into that comedy and then said, we'll bring in the music people. They don't have to be, we don't have to sing. And I remember the first show. I know this sounds like, oh, yeah, right. Well, Methuselah remembers this because we were all excited for it, but not necessarily because it was Saturday Night Live, or Saturday Night as it was known then, but because the Muppets were going to be on it. And the Muppets were awful, really awful, because they didn't have much of a storyline or a reason for being. Jimmy Henson wanted to expand his empire, and you see Jim in the movie. It's Nicholas Braun plays him, and he's always complaining that I don't have the script. There's no script. What are we going to do? What are the Muppets going to be doing in this one? And you could see that was obviously the reason why it wasn't any good. It was because the writers didn't want to write for Muppets. I remember that, and it was a real letdown. And George Carlin was the host, and he basically did his stand-up act, but he was not like they do now where they integrate them into most everything.
Right.
It was a hit and miss, I think, when you first saw it. Now, this is me trying to remember back 50 years, but it did not seem like this laugh riot that you want every week.
Right.
But it was fun to see that, and then to think, will this last? Somebody like Chevy Chase blew up. He became huge, and as a result decided, I don't need this pop stand. I'll go do the other things, and left. So the movie makes him look like what we've heard Chevy is like. There's this kind of, I'm better than the rest of you, and you kind of see that. Corey Michael Smith does a super job as Chevy Chase. Another one is Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd. You catch all of his physical gestures and you see that. And then they have trouble trying to get John Belushi on the set because he's doing drugs. He doesn't want to sign the contract. The three women don't get that much time in the movie, oddly enough. But then women never really got a lot of time on Saturday Night Live either. I did go to Saturday Night Live twice in my life.
Okay.
One time I went was very early into it. It's probably in the 80s when Steve Martin was a host. And it was incredible seeing how they utilize the space. Where you sit is basically what you can see. You all can't see everything. You can't see all the skits, so you have to watch them on monitors. He and Gilda Radner did a dance throughout the whole set. And you could see this because the camera follows him around. And I was there that night, and I thought, oh, if only I could see this old show, I could see if I saw myself in the audience. Because at the time, there was not a tape of this that I would go and look at, And then the second time I went was Ron Howard was the host. And getting tickets today, you might as well sell a kidney. It's easier to get money from that than it would be to try and get a Saturday Night Live ticket.
Yeah, it's fascinating if you get a chance to take the NBC Studios tour in New York at Rockefeller Plaza. They'll take you to different sets of things. And I think I saw Conan O'Brien's old setup and a few other sets for like NBA.
They're all real tiny.
They're all really tiny. But the one that they always take you to is they will always bring you to the Saturday Night Live set. So you can see that because it's the most iconic set they have in the building. And they talk about that. So the seats that are in that upper area that you watch, you can basically only see, where the host comes out and the band. And then the rest of the stages are kind of all over the place. And as you said, you have to watch it on monitors. So the seats up there are from actually old Yankee Stadium.
Oh.
When they were doing the renovations in the 70s and they were getting rid of the seats, they sent some of them to NBC because I guess Lorne Michaels and George Steinbrenner
we need some seats.
Were buddies. Yeah. And they became, they got some seats. So they do the run through twice. They do a rehearsal episode, which is longer than the one that you see on TV. So they get everybody in. They run through the opening, the monologue, weekend update, all that stuff. And then they go through all the skits also. And what they do is they gauge the audience reaction to the skits. And the ones that get the most laughs end up at the beginning of the show, and the ones that are fewer laughs tend to get at the end of the show, and then the ones that get no laughs get cut completely. When you watch an episode of Saturday Night Live and you're like, why is this episode so terrible at the end? That's why, is because they just save whatever it is to round things out. But then you get those occasional episodes, like I've been watching season 50 so far, and this past episode with Ariana Grande hosting, I thought almost every skit from start to finish was hilarious because she was just so good in it as a host. You know, they had that one near the end where she was this Italian singer.
Snotty?
Yes. And she had a very high voice. And no, it's the twist. It's the twist. And I was losing it. But that was one of the last skits in the show. And then she did another one where she was the mirror image of Jennifer Coolidge in a Maybelline lipstick commercial, and I was rolling over, and they brought Dana Carvey in for that sketch also. And
some weeks they kind of aim for, like, if they know Justin Timberlake is going to be on the show, they will write for that because they've done it before. They know how he can deliver. And then they have kind of a slacker week. It might be an athlete. Athletes are always, oh God, what's happening here? And Joe Montana was good. Peyton Manning was good.
Peyton Manning was hilarious. Yeah,
Some of them are like, good luck with this. Yeah. Or they had Bad Bunny on, and Bad Bunny had problems with English, so they had to kind of work around that. Yeah. And then he was always these foreign characters on the show.
Right.
So it's hit and miss depending on the guest.
And then, of course, the musical guests, it's always, you get some of your just truly iconic moments, like Elvis Costello coming on and playing a song that he was like, you shouldn't be playing that. And it had some lyrics in it, which they did not want to be playing on TV. And he started playing a different song and then stopped everything really quick and then tore into that song instead. Beastie Boys with Sabotage was just like an iconic moment. Dave Grohl, not long after Kurt Cobain killed himself, it was before the Foo Fighters. Tom Petty needed a drummer, and Dave Grohl was like slamming on the drums, playing for the Heartbreakers. It's just these wonderful moments like that. But then you think there's that time, a missed opportunity in the late 70s when George Harrison was playing Saturday Night Live, and apparently, this is at that period of time where people are the Beatles, could they get back together? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But Paul McCartney and John Lennon had sort of reconciled a bit, and they were hanging out at the Dakota. And as the story goes, apparently they saw that George Harrison was going to be on SNL, and they were hanging out. They're like, we should go over there and have a little Beatles reunion. One of those things. And there was that they were almost ready to get into a car and go over to the studio, and you would have had basically a Beatles reunion minus Ringo. And they ultimately decided this isn't a good idea, or they didn't want to upstage George. But I think as part of that, there was that legend where didn't Lorne Michaels come out and say, like, if the Beatles get back together, I'll pay $1,000. It was something comically small like that. Those moments of magic.
Well, they like when they break up. I don't know that necessarily is a sign of a good episode. But they do have ones where you watch the cast members and they're trying to hold it in and they can't. Last year with Ryan Gosling, they had a couple of those moments where they were just on the floor. And it is, you do kind of get wrapped up in that. But I like to be the one to laugh. I don't want to have to laugh at the people laughing.
Right.
They didn't have as kind of solid format as it has now. I hate the idea that they have all these political skits before they even start. They used to have good skits before they started. And I think politics, after a while, that's what you're trying to get away from. You don't want to mess with that. But then they'll have the open, and then they'll have a couple of other skits. Then they get to the music. Then they go to the Saturday or the weekend update. Right. Then they do another skit. Then they do the music again, and those last ones that are, So I think that's too formulaic. I think they could mix that up a tish. And maybe if the person is a big singer, let them have 15 minutes of singing and don't have two sections of it.
Yeah, it has changed a bit over the years where I think there was a time where if you did have a really great singer, they would get 3 songs maybe. And it has changed. But now, you were talking about how many cast members. There's 14 full-fledged members, and that doesn't even include the 3 that are the featured players that are kind of on that probationary contract of sorts. And
you remember when they were like so hard up for money? We've got to cut this, we got to cut that, that. And well, how do they afford all these people?
Right?
Are they just paid for Uber money and that's it?
You're lucky to see a cast member appear in more than one skit half the time. It's usually you have like one big skit. Obviously, the star goes from skit to skit to skit, but a lot of times you might get Kenan Thompson for one skit and Bowen Yang for one skit, and Michael Che and Colin Jost are only doing Weekend Update. You're not getting them for anything else.
Bowen Yang had a large period of time off because he was doing Wicked. And it's like, well, did he disappear from the show after he had a big first year? And now with Ariana Grande on there, they did a couple of spoofs of Wicked because she's Gilda in that. So, I'm sure that we'll see more, but he was on a lot these last 2 shows. So maybe he's planning something later that he wants to be away from, and that's how they do is they count, well, you were in 10 skits, so okay, you can have some time off. Entertainment Weekly made a list of the best cast members.
Okay.
And they went down to the 20s, but I have the top 10.
Okay.
And I just wonder, first of all, who do you think is the most valuable player? Who's the one that you would give the MVP award to of all time?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Ooh, man. Good Lord. Is it Belushi, Aykroyd? I don't know. Adam Sandler? I don't know. I don't know who I'd give it to.
They picked Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
And, interestingly, I remember when Eddie Murphy came on the show. In fact, in the old days, they used to introduce us to the cast of Saturday Night Live. You get to see them before they were on.
Mm-hmm.
And they might do even a little bit of stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
For the press. The year that Eddie Murphy came on, he was so charming, but there was a huge picture of him on the set. I mean, it was like, the mugshot was as tall as he was. And he said, "Can I have that?" And they said, "Well, yeah, fine." And he grabbed it like he was going to walk out. No, they said, "Well, we can ship it to you." He said, "My mom would really like this picture. I want this picture." And so I don't know if he ever got it, if mom ever got that picture, but that was one of the cool things because I think Eddie had so many good characters, and he did crack the world for black cast members.
Yes, right.
Before that, it was pretty skinchy, and you'll see in the movie Garrett Morris talking about, where do I fit in? What am I in this? And, I went to Juilliard. I have an opera career. He had all these things, and what they wanted to be, the busboy, the very demeaning roles for him in the show.
Yeah.
And, so it's interesting to see that Eddie was able to flip that. I don't know that I pick him as number 1, but
but he wasn't Eddie Murphy the only cast member to host an episode while they were actually still a member of the cast? Right.
Yes. Well, and then they picked as number 2 who they always called the go-to guy. He was always the one that you could rely on for a lot of skits. And right now, Kenan is like that.
Yeah.
So is Mikey Day, where they are always in a lot of things, and they're going to get a laugh no matter what. Mikey Day and Kenan Thompson are kind of that utility player that you find in every cast that they have. And for the number 2 on their list, they chose Phil Hartman. And Phil Hartman was always in skits, and you always knew he could deliver. I think he had the sensibility or the talent that you need to have to be a successful member of this cast. The versatility that I think is important. And again, I would not agree with these at all, but their number 3 was Bill Murray.
Okay.
Number 4 was Bill Hader. And number 5 is the first woman we get in the list. And who do you suppose that is?
First woman, I would guess Gilda Radner, but if it isn't.
Yeah, it was Gilda. And Gilda was so versatile in the beginning that you didn't really remember who she was. You thought of Rosanna, you thought of Emily Latella, you thought about all those characters she played. Number 6, Will Ferrell, and he was a utility player back in his day. Number 7, Dan Aykroyd. Number 8, John Belushi, and I would hesitate to put him on the list because he wasn't there that long, and the characters were very similar that he played. Number 9 was our only second woman on the top 10 list and more current. And who do you think that?
Kate McKinnon.
Kate McKinnon, yes. And then number 10, one of your favorites,
Dana Carvey.
Dana Carvey.
Some of those, I mean, there's some other guys that have been on it. Like Tim Meadows is one that he was there for a while. You could always count on him. Chris Farley, that's a tremendous one.
He comes in at 11, number 11.
Okay. Fred Armisen, is he on the list at all?
Well, he's not in the top. Your Keenan is number 12.
Okay.
And then Kristen Wiig is number 13.
Oh, okay.
So we get some toward the second tier. Yeah, and I think there are ones doing great work now. I think there are some people that you go, okay, they're good. Bowen Yang, I think, is one of the greatest additions they had. And
he's fun.
Can do a lot of really different kind of goofy characters. But I think that there are ones like that, given the best writing. Heidi Gardner is a utility player who reminds you of those Jan Hooks days where she can do some of the standing females that you go, oh, okay, yeah, that works.
Yeah,
but
Forte, that's
he would go in the Andy Kaufman file because he would do really weird things.
Right. Andy Samberg is like that too.
His MacGyver, yes. Impersonation. Well, and Adam Sandler when he did his great Hanukkah songs.
Right. Yeah. Kind of going back a little bit too, you mentioned Garrett Morris, and it took a while, but he's somebody that had kind of one of those, at least for me, one of those iconic sketches too, especially as a baseball fan, because he was Chico Escuela, who was Chico when Bill Murray was the sports reporter. He goes out to Shea Stadium to do this look at Mets player Chico Escuela, and one of my favorite, they were going through all the complaints that players, or, he had with players, and he's like, Jerry Koosman, steal Chico's soap, put it back. It was one of those just classic. I could always think of that. And, they're playing catch and nobody throws them the ball. And it's fun when they do some of those where they actually get out of the studio and film on location and do something a little out of the ordinary.
I like too when they lampoon real people, not just politicians, but there'd be easy marks for them, and I don't think they do that as much anymore. You don't see the Oprah sketches, for example, and you don't see the there's no sketch that lampoons Jimmy Fallon, and I think he would be ripe, even though he was a member of the cast.
Right. My favorite, and this is if you go to YouTube, people have actually made like YouTube playlists, so you can watch a playlist of every episode of Jeopardy with Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek. It was Celebrity Jeopardy, where they had Sean Connery on and
Burt Reynolds,
like the back and forth with Sean and Alex Trebek making the crude jokes about his mother, and
there they lampoon celebrities, and I think they'd be perfect for this. Instead, they invite those celebrities on, and then Kim Kardashian, come on, you could do a lot with her,
right?
And she was a host, but I would have her as a character. And I think Paris Hilton, another example, where they should do a little more of that with people who are in the news right now. I don't know who they're trying to appeal to, though. I think a younger audience doesn't necessarily watch this show.
Yeah, it's, I think back to when I got kind of hooked into it. It's that age of maybe you are staying up late because you're babysitting the neighbor's kids. So my wife always talks about how there was a dentist in her town, and she would babysit the dentist's kids when they would go out. And on Saturday nights, she'd get the kids to bed, and then she would just hang out and watch Saturday Night Live. And it was like early 90s cast that I grew up on, because we're about the same age. I think about the sleepovers I had with friends or whatever, and you would stay up late and then watch Wayne's World and those classic moments. My kids are about the age I was when I probably started watching it. My daughters are 13, my twins. And, it's this Sunday morning, my wife and I had stayed up for to watch the beginning of SNL, but we kind of started falling asleep. And so we're like, all right, we'll just pick it up in the morning.
You're old.
So we're getting old. So we pop it on Sunday morning to just kind of finish it up right around, I think we picked up with Weekend Update. One of my daughters wakes up. She comes and sits down on the couch with us. She's just looking at her phone. She pays no attention to the skit. She has no idea what's going on. My wife and I were like rolling over for it's a twist, or the Maybelline with Jennifer Coolidge, and we think this is hilarious. My daughter's she's scrolling her phone, scrolling the socials.
Yeah, I think they don't resonate with that audience, and so as a result, it maybe does have a shelf life. There might be a time when you say goodbye to Saturday night.
That's what I was going to ask you now, because there's been rumors off and on, and I think they started sometime after that 40th, because if you remember back 10 years ago, they did the big 40th anniversary.
They brought them all back.
It was like open invitation to anybody that was a cast member, and there were some rumblings between there and then I would say season 45 also, where they said, Lorne is, he's in his 80s now, right? So, is he getting ready to hang it up? Will they maybe, 50 it's a good opportunity. So
right.
We've done 50 seasons and we're going to go out, but there's been no confirmation. Will there be a season 51? It's strong so far. I've been enjoying the first few episodes of this season, so I wouldn't mind seeing this cast come back for season 51. But I also think maybe, are you really growing the audience? Is this generation of kids that are 10, 15 years old now that's that age you would get into it normally, but they're just not into it. Maybe this is it.
But, is this something that they should sacrifice? Because, look, are you getting an audience on Saturday night on any other network? No.
Right. Yep.
And so it is a real good cash cow. Also, it produces a lot of viral video.
Yep.
So the next day, if you're having Dick in a Box, it's going to go viral. And so I think that's how another audience might catch it through social media, but they won't see it as this big unit that we're going to sit and watch.
Right. The day after the first episode of this season aired, I opened up TikTok, and what was the first thing I see? Because it was coming on the heels of like Mudang being this huge, the baby hippo being this huge thing, and it was the Bone Yang Weekend Update sketch where he was playing Mudang, and that was a little controversial too, because of the subject matter of it. But maybe that's it. Is the kids aren't watching Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, nor are they watching it live, but they're watching the clips of it on YouTube, on TikTok, wherever.
I don't think he would say he's leaving. I don't think that Lorne would say, I'm done with this, we're turning it over, because he did turn it over to others and he didn't like the way it went.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in the day-to-day things, he's not doing everything.
Right.
I think that there are lieutenants that are helping them through the week. And, it's a good calling card. It's a good thing for him to have. I do think, though, that because it's the 50th year, we're going to see a little more push this year. I don't know. I haven't heard that they're having a big special at some point. But I do wonder if next season might be a different take on all of it, if there is a 51st.
Maybe, it may be. I know Lorne Michaels, he's still listed as one of the writers on the show. But maybe he's just there, in spirit largely.
Right. And I'm sure
to be there on Saturday nights and they do those occasional, the camera scan, and you'll get the look of like Lorne in his stoic look and overseeing things.
I'm sure he's like kind of the ancient sage who sits there and said, no, that's not going to work, because he's seen everything and he knows what does work and won't work. And so I bet he's in those table reads or the first run-throughs. And by the way, you mentioned that too. If you try to get tickets, don't hesitate to take tickets for the early run-through, because you do offer them, and those are easier to get than the actual show. I think getting tickets to the real show, you got to know somebody.
Yes.
Because there aren't that many seats, but they will bring in audiences if you apply. And they always say, send, a thing a year in advance when you think it's coming. And I would do it. I would make sure that I had a request in, and then I would plan my trip around that if I got the tickets.
Yeah. It's fun.
It's easier to get a hotel room than it is to get tickets to Saturday.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it's something. And Lorne Michaels, it's not like he's inactive. I mean, he's still producing things like with Seth Meyers and those late shows, and those are all under his production company now. I mean, it's he's got a pretty large reach, and even if he isn't super active, if he's kind of in that semi-retirement range, it doesn't look like he's semi-retired. I mean, he looks like he's still busy. And if it's what it's, is that really a day job? It's not like, you're not working a kitchen. It's hectic and it's a lot of work but it's not like a day job like you and I see it. It's
Right.
a totally different thing. And he probably has a lot of control and a lot of say and can kind of come and go as he pleases and do things as he likes.
And then you get to be the master who says, no, I can't get you any tickets to this show.
That's right.
And you have the power that's right there. Look at the big stars who have been on it as musical guests. I mean, he's running that board like crazy. If you're in the music industry, you want to get your act on Saturday Night Live.
There it is.
Go see the film, because I think it's a great primer to what, this all was about. It does capture some of that chaos that's part of the whole world. And I know it's not like that now. I know that they are not putting the last brick in minutes before it starts the show. But it shows you how when they do something that's very revolutionary, it does take some kind of trial and error to make it happen.
Check out the new movie.
Who was your favorite? You have to pick one now. Who was your favorite cast member?
It was probably Dana Carvey. I always loved him.
Okay.
With maybe Chris Farley also.
And I think Bill Murray was good. I don't think he's top 5, but I loved him when he did all those lounge singer spoofs.
Yeah.
Where he did Star Wars stuff.
Star Wars.
Those were cute.
Yeah.
But I do think they're right with Phil Hartman. I think Phil Hartman was the glue for so many years. Yep. And you knew that if he was in there, it was going to at least get a laugh. And Ann Hooks was another one during his period who I thought was just incredible. And she kind of gets shunted to the side now. And that's too bad, because I think she was just as strong.
Yeah. And sadly, both of them passed away pretty early. Yeah. I mean, Phil Hartman murdered and Jan Hooks, I think, died of cancer.
But we have them on tape, so that's what matters most, right?
Exactly. All right. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back again next week with another episode, Streamed and Screened.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.